Hello, my name is Dr. Yisroel Susskind. I'd like to welcome you to my first podcast in a new series called Marriage, the Way You Want It to Be. It's about marriage, the way you dreamed that it would be. Can we make it like that? I have been a psychotherapist and marital therapist for over 50 years. I've trained other psychologists in marital therapy. I would like to share with you some of the essence that I've distilled from my past 50 years of experience. Let me start with a question. When does a man gently open the car door for his wife? The answer is if it's a new car or it's a new wife. The Talmud talks about the difference between a first marriage and a second marriage. We have a statement of our sages that before a person is even born, a decision is made in heaven as to who their soulmate, the second half of their soul, in Yiddish, their bashert, their intended, who that person will be. But the sages raise a question. How can it be that this is determined, your spouse is determined, before you're even born? It doesn't seem fair. We have a principle that your life is based on the deeds that you do. If you do good deeds, there are rewards. So shouldn't it be that the spouse that you get, one of the most important decisions in your life, should be based on how good a person you are, how good your actions are? So the rabbis in the Talmud, the reference is Sota, Masechet Sota, Tractate Sota, the second page, the first side of the second page, says a man's first wife is based on that heavenly decree that is made before he's even born. A man's second wife is based on his meritorious action. Now, something of an answer, but it's also puzzling. Why would the Talmud elaborate a principle that doesn't apply to everybody? Certainly today, not everybody has a second wife, and certainly if you go back historically to that period of time, other than some widowers, most people did not have more than a first wife. So here's one answer. Everybody gets a second spouse. What does that mean? You meet someone. You fall in love with them. You decide to marry them. Much of that decision is not under your voluntary control. Psychologists will tell you that when you meet someone and you feel attracted to them, there is a whole cocktail of at least 10 different hormones, 10 neurotransmitters that are released in your body that influence your attitude toward the person. Let me mention just a couple. There's a hormone called DHEA, and it creates an amphetamine-like high when you're in the presence of this person. There's the hormone dopamine, and dopamine creates a sense of excitement and anticipation that something wonderful will happen. There's a hormone called PEA, phenylethylamine, and it provides that sense of love at first sight. And finally, the one that's most relevant to our discussion is oxytocin. Oxytocin is the cuddle hormone. It's the bonding hormone. But the problem with oxytocin has been shown to impair judgment. It makes a person overly optimistic and less critical in their evaluations. So the first person you first marry very often is based on an impaired decision, a decision that was not necessarily under your control. In addition, you marry the person based on limited information. You've never had a child together. You've never had to discuss whether to have a child or how many children to have, or what the proper way is to educate that child or to discipline that child. You haven't had to decide when are you visiting your parents or their parents, and even more so, when do you decide whether to bring their aging parents into your home? There are major decisions that you've never faced. You do not know each other and how you will react at critical times. And nonetheless, you marry. Now, there is a second spouse that you have. That same person that you married, but it's the person who you've been living with over a couple of years. Some of the illusions are gone. The hormones are not being released in the same fashion. You see them more accurately, and you go through more challenges. What is that second, we'll call it second, marriage going to be like? That's not ordained in heaven. That is up to you. That is based on your actions. If you learn how to be a loving and nurturing person, if you learn how to be patient, if you learn how to tolerate your spouse's own mistakes and weaknesses, if your spouse is upset, do you get upset? Or do you learn how to help them, how to soothe them? If they're stuck in the muck, do you step on their head and move them down lower? Or do you extend an arm or step into the muck with your own feet and help pull them out? The quality of your second marriage, that depends on you and on your skills. And I'm hoping that this series that I'm presenting to you will help you in developing the skills that get you the marriage that you want and that you deserve.